So remember how I say that I'm a plumber? We're the plumbers of Wall Street. When I worked at DTC, they called us the plumbers of Wall Street, right? And no one cares what the plumber has to say until the shit backs up in the living room. So the plumber on Wall Street is everything that happens after the trade. The trade is just, so many shares, right? There's elements to a trade. How many shares of what stock, at what price, finish on what day, where do we settle? Like there's all these elements that go into it, all these agreements. And most trades now are what they call pre-cleared, so that the brokers work out any differences. Like, oh, I thought you said $1.10. No, I said $1.01. So that's like, oh, it's worked out. And then everything after that is the Wall Street plumbing. That's trade clearing and settlement, everything after that.
Okay.
Proxy plumbing is everything that happens before the votes go to the company.
Okay.
Before the votes go to the company. So that's the plumbing. If the broker fails to receive shares at settlement, then they don't have a share to vote. And too often, they don't keep track of who they shouldn't send proxy voting material to. And so they just send it out to everybody on their list. And the issuer has to pay for that, right? So a company like Broadridge, who's one of the service providers, probably the biggest one that I know of, gets information from DTC that says Goldman Sachs has 10 million shares of AMC. And so Broadridge then goes to Goldman Sachs and they go, what are the names and addresses of the people holding the 10 million shares? We'd like to send them a proxy voting material, or tell us that they don't want to be identified, right? That's what they call it, an objecting owner, objecting beneficial owner. So then Goldman Sachs sends up everything. So they go to their AMC and they say, here's everybody, right? And let's just put aside anybody who objects. They say, here's everybody who holds it. Broadridge then, because Goldman Sachs paid them a fee, looks at it and they go, wait a minute, there's, you sent me the total of his shares in these accounts equals 11 million. So you have 1 million too many here. They send that message back to Goldman, and Goldman then fixes it in a completely opaque process with no rules, I can't tell you how long we've been fighting to have the rule, some sort of guidance in place for that. But they can just, now let's say it's an important vote. It's something that Goldman benefits from a yes, whereas household investors benefit from a no. Goldman now has 1 million shares that they don't have to listen to whatever household investors told them. They just drop those million and send in the 10 million that voted yes, and they drop the million that voted no, for example. So that's part of this plumbing. This is why this, you could take all the failed to deliver numbers that are published by the SEC, multiply it by 2, and that's how many shares are sort of missing in action, right? So the same thing happens with stock loan. When if the broker fails to receive shares, they have no vote, 0 vote, because they don't have shares, they don't have a vote. All they have is an IOU for the share. And this is really called contractual settlement date accounting, which allows them to put the IOU into the household investor's account because they've already taken the cash, settlement date accounting, they've already taken the cash out of their account. In a stock loan, the vote goes to the borrower. So whatever share pool, and anybody with a margin account has already agreed that the broker can lend your shares out, not tell you about it, not share the money with you, not share the profits with you. Those shares also have no votes. So again, they're going to say, DTC is going to say you have, 10 million shares in your account, and not only do you have, 11 million that are in your household investor accounts, but you have another million or so that you've lent out. So you don't have votes for those. Now there's 2 million shares, you've got to get rid of those votes because they're not going to be there. So, and this is only if you're going through like DTC, through the centralized system. If the broker process that trade against the house account. So if you ask your broker to buy some shares for you, they can, under certain circumstances, sell it to you from their own accounts, from their, settled in-house. We have no idea what happens there. But this is about that. So the proxy plumbing is all this stuff that goes on in between there, in between the time that the company calls for a vote and the time that the votes are actually sent to the issuer. That's the plumbing. And that plumbing has been broken for a really long time. I mean, this was the 1993 when the transfer agents, registrars came to me and they said there's a problem.
Yeah.
Because the short sales and the stock lending were getting too many votes turned in. So did someone say, oh, well, let's figure out who should have the vote and make sure that they get a vote and don't let people vote who shouldn't, right? Let's figure that out. They said was no. Broadridge, they were ADP at the time. Broadridge said, and they says, I'll tell you what, for a fee, I'll tell you when you've turned in too many votes. And then you can just fix it and send it back to me. And you don't have to tell me how you did it. I don't want to see. I don't want to hear. Don't tell me how you did it.
Yeah.
Just fix it and send it back to me. So that's the plumbing. That's the problem. And there are no new rules on the even in the long-term agenda for the SEC. This has been pushed back from 2010 when Congress sent letters to the SEC and all, multiple requests for them to please, you've got to fix this. And here we are 13 years later, and it's still not on the agenda. And it was on the short-term agenda for a little while, and then they just pushed it back, right? So, so when Gensler posts something like, this is we're going to change these rules so that household investors can now have an easier time getting a proposal on the agenda for an annual meeting of a public company. So what? If I can't vote on it, what difference does it make if my votes are tossed out? Broadridge tossed out 7 billion votes. 7 billion votes just through this process in 2022. Yeah, 7 billion. They had a little disclosure. They don't do it every year, but one year was because they want to brag about how well this service works. We have a service where if you give us too many votes, we won't tell the company. We'll tell you so you can fix it and just send us the number of votes you're supposed to have, right? So they wanted to brag about how well that works. And so they showed the difference between the number of votes they processed before that fee, service fee, that fee for service went in, and how many after. It was a difference of 7 billion votes. Now, I guarantee you, those were not institutional investor votes. Those were not broker-dealer votes, because those people know if their votes have gone in or not. They know if they don't have shares in their account. Who doesn't know? Household investors don't know. So the votes, the 7 billion votes, that's a lot. That's a lot. And that was just for what was processed by Broadridge.
Yeah.
And they're not the only one that has this whole service. They're the biggest in the US, but that's a lot of votes to get tossed out just in one election cycle, right? One annual meeting cycle.
Wow, that's starting to make sense as to why so many companies end up with like 100% of the shares voting in things. It's just like a little like moment for me there.
Yeah. So as the institutional investor voting participation rose, the household investor voting participation fell, and that right there tells you what's going on. Who's getting tagged with we didn't have a share for you, so I can't count your vote, because you won't know.
Yeah.
Right? So you'll still get proxy material that the issuer paid for, but I don't count your vote when it comes in because, I had a little too many votes, more votes than shares.
Oh, it's a dirty world.
So that's the plumbing. That's what's going on in the plumbing. Yes, it's a very dirty world. It's the sewers. It's the sewers of annual meetings, company annual meetings. And so the companies don't know. They used to find out. And then this service went in where, the processor says, pay me a fee, dear broker, and I won't tell the company that you've got more votes than shares.
Well, handy little service for them, isn't it?
Yeah, very nice.
Anyway, I'm aware that we've run over time, so I really want to thank you again for your time. You've cleared up, as usual, many things for me. And I will put links for the stuff we discussed and for your the link to your book, Naked, Short and Greedy, for people if they are stupid enough and crazy enough not yet to have read it. Comes highly recommended. My copy is somewhere behind me.
Right.
I don't know. No, maybe it's out in the living room. There's several bookshelves all run.
It's actually being read, right?
Yeah. Hey everyone, thanks for making it right the way to the end of the podcast. I love that you tuned in this long. Do me a favor, hit subscribe, because 80% of you bastards are not subscribing, but you're watching my videos. See you next time.